Okay, full screen, right?
Right.
Okay, let's go. So I'm going to talk about the Reformation and Counter-Reformation and how it shows up in art. And we'll start with Martin Luther and talk about the Protestant Reformation, and then just a little bit about Calvinism in the Netherlands, and then iconoclasm. And then what did the Catholics do about it? And the Jesuits actually were an important ally for the Catholic Church in their counter to it, and the Council of Trent, and then we'll look at a little bit of Counter-Reformation art. Shouldn't take too long. We'll see. We have plenty of time though, don't we? And I am open to questions anytime. So Jim, you can just put them in if you see a hand up. I'm fine with that.
Okay.
All right. So we'll start with Martin Luther. And
are we recording? Are we recording?
Yes.
Okay, great. That's right. We're all reminders.
Yes, but it says right on the screen recording, so there's no need to ask if it's up there. Go ahead.
It's not on my screen, but everybody else does see it. Okay, so in this time period, in the 1500s, late 1400s, there was really a lot of dissatisfaction with the Catholic Church, corruption and other concerns. But one German Augustinian monk, Martin Luther, really took action. And he was very opposed. He was very upset with all the things that were going on. And historically, the story is that he did write these 95 theses, which were points of contention with the actions of the Catholic Church. And so he nailed it to the door of Castle Church in Wittenberg, where he lived, and he wanted to stimulate a debate with the church over these issues. Well, the debate never happened, and current scholars aren't so sure that story. It's kind of like George Washington chopping down the cherry tree. They're not sure that it's accurate. They believe now that he mailed it to the bishop, and that it was the practice to post things, and eventually it may have been put up in public somewhere, but they don't believe that story. But what's interesting is we're approaching Halloween, October 31st, which is also, maybe you didn't know, that's also Reformation Day, celebrated because that's the day when he nailed it to the door. So here are some of the concerns that he wrote in there. Certainly, this is not an inclusive list, just a few, but the corruption of the church that started with the Pope and on down, and particularly he was really upset about the selling of indulgences, and that meant that wealthy people, in the view of many Protestant, well, future Protestants, and also Catholics, were bothered by the fact that wealthy people could buy their salvation. So their sins were all forgotten if they paid the church, and they would use that in times when, for example, they wanted to make a new church like St. Peter's. They would invite people to buy these indulgences to help, and that really bothered people. What also concerned him was the authority of the church, the authority of the Pope. He thought that the Bible was the ultimate authority, and that the Pope had no authority over purgatory or salvation. In fact, if you look at some of his key beliefs, that's one of them. And grace is a free, and it's an unmerited favor of God. It's not connected to any action of yours. It doesn't have anything to do with good works or bad behavior, it's there for you. And your faith is what is the key to your salvation, not what you did, or in particular the saints. He felt the saints had no foundation in the gospel. Again, the Bible is the law. All these other things are man-made. And he rejected most of the 7 sacraments of the Catholic Church, especially indulgences, which were associated with the sacraments for penance and confession, and also was associated with penance. And he was very concerned about confession, because you were to have a personal, an individual relationship with God. You did not need an intercessor to go through. So I'm not really going to talk about the 7 sacraments, but I have more information about that available on my notes, which I will probably publish. I don't think they're quite at that point yet, but if you're interested in that, there's a little more information on my notes. Unless you have questions about anything now, we'll just move on. So Lucas Cranach, the elder, expressed some of Martin Luther's ideas in his art. And one of the practices at the time that the Protestants used was to, instead of putting art and decorating their churches, they spread their views in print form. Most of these artists that would make art like this would also make either engravings or wood block prints, things like that. They would use the printed form of it as a handout for people. In this one, we can see his ideas. Lucas Cranach actually consulted with Martin Luther on this, and this is called the Law and the Gospel. So one side, and you can guess which is which, the side on the right is the gospel and the side on the left is the law. It's divided very nicely by that tree in the center. Look up at the top, you can see that it's living and has green leaves on the gospel side and it's dying on the law side. And you will also see
Excuse me,
that,
Linda. Linda, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but on my screen, I just have you. I don't have your slides.
You don't? Does everybody else have my slides?
Yes,
I see the slide.
Yes,
I
I
have
see
your
the slide.
slides. Yeah.
I don't think there's anything I can do about that I'm aware of.
That's got to be something with your computer, Bob. You have the wrong
Thanks.
settings on or something.
Okay.
Gallery view,
I'll try.
probably.
Are you in speaker view?
Well,
Or minimize the people so that I don't think there's anything I can do. I'm sorry.
I'm all set. Thank you.
Okay. So going back to what we're looking at here, again, this is demonstrating that idea of faith rather than what you do. So over on the law side, on the left, you see that there are there's near that tree, you see that naked figure. He's that nude figure there. He's and some of the others, they're dying, and they're kind of showing that angst. And in the background, you see Adam and Eve, who are representing the sin. So that in the law, your actions are what either give you salvation or prevent you from having it. Even down in the front, there is Moses with the tablets that are the 10 Commandments that are telling you how you need to act, and that's really important. But over on the right, you see that John the Baptist is down next to the tree is another nude figure, and John the Baptist is pointing him toward Christ on the cross, and then Christ risen from the tomb. And the idea is that it's not what you do, it's your faith. And to make all that clear, on the bottom, those things that we can't read are six they're taken from the Bible, six verses or sentiments taken from the Bible and put down there. So this is the Protestant idea of how to express the Protestant religious view. And then here's another piece of Reformation art, and the crucifixion. This looks very different, doesn't it, from what we see in the Italian Renaissance and the Spanish Renaissance depictions of the crucifixion. It's very, very simple composition. There really aren't, notice that the Marys aren't there, the saints aren't there. It's a very simple hill. There's no little background with a village or anything like that. In addition to Christ and the two thieves on the cross, we have this centurion who represents that in the Bible. All of this is in the Bible. And the centurion has words coming out of his mouth, and there are words above the cross of Christ. You see in German, Vater, in dein Herz befehle ich mein Geist. So into thy hand I commend thy spirit. And then the centurion, the words coming out from his mouth are, wahrlich dieser Mensch ist Gottes Sohn gewesen. So he recognizes that this is the true Son of God. So this is a very, very important sentiment for Protestants to see this Roman centurion recognizing Christ. And when you compare it side by side with something like Bernat of Spain, look at the difference. It's really very, very obvious that there's a difference in how it's presented and how you're to react to it. Then there was this other side of it, and
Linda, can I interrupt? Richard put up a hand.
Yes.
So Linda, back to that other picture before you move on.
Okay, this one?
Yes, please. So on the left with the centurion, the essence of the Protestant idea was the individual recognition through faith. Was that the idea that is separating that from the other, more kind of counter-Reformation
Yes.
Italian idea? Is that it?
The Bible is the authority, and then if it's not in the Bible, you just ignore it. And your faith in God, your faith in Christ, that's important. Very important. Your sins can be forgiven because that's a God-given thing. Grace is given by God, and it's there. And the crucifixion is telling you that's there. He died for your sin. And so their belief is that it's faith. Whereas in the Catholic Church, it's very much what you do, and they use the saints as models of how to live your life. And they lay out that also the 7 sacraments are all very, very important. But it all comes down to that difference. It's what you do. And then in the Catholic Church, for salvation, you would confess to a priest, and you would be given salvation. whereas in a Protestant, it's all there for you. You just believe and have faith. It's kind of the gist of it. Does
Okay,
that
thank
answer
you.
your
Yeah, that's
question?
good. Thank you.
Okay, so Martin Luther and the Protestants weren't above really going after the Pope. And here we see this. This is actually by a Danish artist, Melchior Locke, and it is an etching, and it shows a satire on the papacy. So the Pope is the one on your left, and if you look, he has 3 heads. Look at the 3 heads. The one on the left, he has the papal, or the one in the center has the papal tiara, and then the one on the left has a turban, and the one on the right looks like a little baby. So he isn't showing the Pope kind of anywhere there as a normal human being. And also look again on the right at that image of the Pope. And did you notice down at the bottom, see his long lizard tail coming out from under his robe? And then his left foot, look at it, it's deformed. And if you go back to the image on the left, look at his hand, he has claws. So he's really making a statement about the Pope. And also, if you look on his robe at the brooch that he has on, it's in the center, that circular thing. It's a frog, and at that time, the frog was a symbol of fake religion. And then look back again at the larger image, and you see this other individual there. He is a soldier, and the Pope is handing him money. And this implies that the church bribed the military for protection, and that those actions are driven by demons of an animalistic nature, hence the lizard tail and the claw hands. So they had a little fun going after the Pope. So let's talk a little bit about what was going on in the Netherlands. You already heard a little bit about their history. They were under, in the early 16th century, they were under control of Spain. And then in 1579, there was a revolt, and it ended up being split in 2. You can see the color difference on the map on the right. In the south, that lighter area was the Union of Arras, and that was Catholic, still under Spain. But up in the north, the Union of Utrecht, which was Protestant, then became the Dutch Republic. And in the Dutch Republic, they did tolerate activities of Jews, Catholics, and other sects somewhat, but public Catholic worship was forbidden, because in the Dutch Republic, they had gotten rid of the monarchy, they got rid of the Pope, and which they were a big important port, and they became very wealthy, and they had lots of wealthy merchants and so forth, and they were no longer under the control of monarchy or the church. So Protestantism rose very quickly there, and Calvinism became the state religion. So what's Calvinism, and who was Calvin? Well, he was French, and he was the leading French Protestant reformer. And he was one of the most important figures in the sort of the second generation of the Protestant Reformation. But he ended up having to flee France. He went to Switzerland and eventually settled in Geneva around 1541. And he followed a lot of the Lutheran or Martin Luther's beliefs, but he had his own ideas about things also. He stressed God's power, and humanity, predestiny was important to him. And he also had a regime that was really about austere morality. And while Martin Luther was somewhat opposed to images, not totally, but to Calvin, he thought they had no religious relevance. And even worse, he thought that images could lead to idolatry. Well, and that kind of thinking, not only Calvin, but others, led to iconoclasm. And the term at the time, their term for it was Bildensturm, which is the same as iconoclasm, and it is the destruction of images. And that word translates directly as image storm or statue storm. So in 16th century Europe, there was a lot of iconoclasm going on. Some of these groups, like the Calvinists, went on rampages and destroyed religious works, but mostly in public places, but they did pull down churches. And in the summer of 1566, it spread very rapidly. It started in the south and went into the north. And you can see here, this is in Antwerp in Belgium. And it shows you, look at them, they're climbing up ladders to pull down stained glass or to break it. They have like bats, they have pieces of wood or some kind of clubs that they are bashing the windows in. And if you look at this, you can see this group of men in the center that are all pulling on these ropes going up here. See, they're pulling down all these sculptural figures that are up here. And sometimes they even pulled the whole church down. It was pretty violent. Look everywhere you look here, you see men carrying those clubs. And of course, this was all in the name of God. They took this sentiment from the Ten Commandments, from the commandment about no graven images, is what they based it on. So they felt very justified in doing this. This is the kind of thing that is really bothersome, that people can justify these things. We still see it today. Remember when they pulled down the Buddhist sculptures in where was that, Afghanistan, I think. Anyway, it still goes on, and it's just amazing. And we lost a lot of these things due to that. But thank God it didn't last too long. So, what did the Catholics do about this? This is the Counter-Reformation. What did they do about this rise of the Protestants? Oops, I'm ahead of myself. I'll catch up. But anyway, there were not only the Protestants that were carrying on. There were some conservative Catholics that were really also upset about one thing was the art. They thought the art in the High Renaissance had gone way over the top, or not necessarily High Renaissance, but Renaissance art had gone over the top with nudity, and also they objected to some what they considered pagan images, and Botticelli is an example of that. I think it was Jim, somebody talked about Botticelli and showed you. I just pulled out the center close-up of Venus in his Birth of Venus, and you can see the nudity, and then also it's pagan, and there's sort of a association with Mary here, and that's really disturbing to them, because that this idea of Mary would never be depicted in such a fashion. So there were people who were upset about that. They were also disturbed about the indulgences, the nepotism, and the extreme wealth. These high church officials lived a good life, and much of that was due to corruption. So, and then by the late Renaissance, and the Mannerist painters really upset a lot of people because they didn't paint in a traditional way, and many Catholics and also the Protestants were upset about it. And an example of that is the Veronesi's wedding feast at Cana. Now, this is a story right out of the Bible about the first miracle that Christ performed when he turned the water into wine at this wedding in Cana. But look at the way Veronese shows it. It's in an urban setting with classical architecture, and look how busy and lively it is. Everybody's just moving and playing music and drinking, and yes, Christ is there and he's in the center, but he's almost not important. And the other thing is all the people that are here. There are monarchs from England and France, even Suleiman the Magnificent, who was the Sultan of the Ottoman Empire, is in this. So this was quite upsetting to very conservative Catholics and Protestants at the time. So one of the weapons that the church used were the Jesuits, and they were the Order of the Society of Jesus. And Ignatius Loyola of Loyola, who now everybody calls Loyola, he was a Spanish nobleman, and he founded the Society of Jesus in 1539 and got the approval of Pope Paul III in 1540 for them as an order. And you can see on this image of him in stained glass, it has their motto on it, "To the greater glory of God." So they helped counteract this Protestant campaign by their missionary work. And they set up schools and universities. And of course, in those schools and universities, they taught the Catholic ideals. And they really traveled the world. They went of course all over Europe, but they went to the Americas, they went to Asia. Those of you that have had Asian art already, you will remember that the Jesuits brought the prints, some of those etching and engraving prints, to Asia and influenced the Asian artists with that. And they are still today are very focused very much on education and are still a very important arm of the Catholic Church. So here I looked for
And excuse me, sorry,
yes.
Before you go on, Richard has a hand up.
Okay, we'll go back. Yes, Richard.
I'm sorry, he dropped out of the meeting. Go ahead.
Oh, okay. So this painting by Leal, it has several different titles: a Jesuit conversion, or an allegory of the crown of life, and there's another one that I can't remember right now. But if you look at this painting, you see that there's an angel. There's supposedly a Jesuit studying, and the angel behind him is pointing up to the crown of life. And this is something. This concept comes from the Bible in two different places, in James 1:2, and then there's another reference to it in Revelations. But the one in James says, "Blessed is the one who perseveres under trial, because having stood the test, that person will receive the crown of life that the Lord has promised to those who love him." Well, this is not a promise of eternal life, but it's more of an honor and a recognition, a symbol of grace for those that like someone becoming a monk, that persevere in for their faith. And around that crown is, I see if I have that. Yeah. There's Latin text you can see around that crown, and that says, "Blessed is the man who endures temptation, for when he has been approved, he will receive the crown of life which the Lord has promised to those who love him." So this is to encourage everyone to stay the course, remain faithful no matter what. Remember, it's faith that counts. And also in the background, if you didn't notice, there's a painting of the crucifixion. Now, the main way the church officially opposed the Reformation was through this Council of Trent, which was a meeting of high church officials, and they had 25 sessions. Oh, I thought I changed that to sessions. Anyway, they were over decades. They started in 1545 and continued until 1563, and this was pulled together by Pope Paul III, and the idea was that they wanted to strengthen the church, and one of the ways they were going to do that was by promoting visual art, and so they developed guidelines for the religious art, and I've just listed a few. It goes on, and it's very extensive, but these are the ones that you can easily visualize in Counter-Reformation art. Art should encourage piety. It should be direct, dramatic, understandable, and relevant to ordinary people. It should distinguish the one true church by focusing on the roles of Mary, the saints, and the sacraments. The faithful should be instructed diligently concerning intercession and invocation of the saints and the veneration of relics. And invocation is, as my understanding is, invocation is calling on a saint for help, and intercession is when someone speaks for you or does something for you. It's a way of helping you, and that's the saints helping you, or the priest helping you. So in art, redemption should be used as models for people, images, stories about redemption. And then all images were supposed to be approved by the bishop. So they sent that out, and they had commissions. But before the Council of Trent, the very first commission that Pope Paul III did was to commission this Judgment Day, or Last Judgment, by Michelangelo in the altar wall of the Sistine Chapel. And so I'm going to sort of really go through this painting, because it isn't after the Council of Trent, but it really gets at what they wanted to do with art. So look, first of all, look at the size of it. You can see the altar here with these very high candles. And you know, if someone's standing behind that, they're just coming up to like here. So you get these figures are life-size or larger on here, and there are over 300 of them. And where it's placed behind the altar is, whenever you come to the church for Mass, you see this. You can never forget it. So Judgment Day will be on your mind. And he wanted it to complete the history of salvation, because in the Sistine Chapel, we have the God's creation on the ceiling, and then the covenant with Israel is Old Testament ceilings, or Old Testament scenes are on the ceiling in the south wall, and the early life of Christ is on the west wall. So now this was the final Judgment Day on the altar wall. And when you look at it, it's not like it has no boundaries. It's not like it's framed. It just like it invades the viewer, or it's beyond the viewer's space. It goes on forever. And it really identifies with the viewer and involves the viewer, because Judgment Day has not yet happened for the viewer. It's happened for these people in the painting, but by the way, it's a fresco, but it hasn't happened yet for the viewer. And some people considered this Michelangelo's masterpiece, but others were scandalized by it. The nudity, the contorted poses, the breaks with transitions, and he did include mythical characters in it. So it wasn't perfect, but it does point out the things that were important in Counter-Reformation. Christ is in the center, is the focal point, and he's surrounded by martyred saints. Here's a close-up of that. You can see he's got his right arm raised it's judgment or damnation or whatever. And look how muscular he is in that twisted pose. And then under his arm is Mary, and her expression has been described as being accepting of his judgment. Now he's surrounded by martyrs and saints, and as I said, these are models for the people. So look at it, their behavior was so good that they are close to Christ. And you can identify them. There's John the Baptist and St. Peter and many others, of course, but I want to focus on this one right down in the front by Christ's left leg. And that is Saint Bartholomew. And how do I know that's Saint Bartholomew? Well, his attributes, of course. He was skinned alive, as I understand it. And, we talked about the horrible things that were done to these saints for their faith. And he's in his right hand, he's holding the flaying knife that was used to skin him. And then in his left, he's holding his skin. And look at the face on the skin. This is actually a very grotesque self-portrait of Michelangelo. I find that amazing. That's why I pointed that out. This whole thing is, you could spend a lifetime looking at it and finding different things in each little section of it. So can you imagine coming there to Mass, and every time you come, you see something else, and they're all reminders of Judgment Day and what happens to you if you are good or bad. It's kind of like Santa Claus, right? Who's naughty or nice? So then below Christ are these angels that are trumpeting, and they're very different. This is when I say non-traditional. They're wingless, they're nude, they're very muscular, and look at them puffing out their cheeks, trumpeting away about Judgment Day, letting people know. And here they have the book where all your do's and don'ts, your activities are in there, and they're showing it down to the people below and saying, hey, are you on the good side or the bad side? And in this particular painting, let me get the size right, they're organized, all these 300 or more people are organized into little groups. And on the lower left, the dead are emerging from their graves, and they're taking on flesh. And on the right are the people who are, and they're lifting up towards heaven. And on the left, they're being pushed down toward hell. So it's like the scales of justice are weighing on them in this. So we'll focus on first on the ones on the left who are going up. And you can see there are angels helping them to go up. Here's a couple right here that's being pulled up by an angel, but there are other people like these people that are floating up on their own. You can see here they're coming out of their graves. They're taking on flesh. So these are the people that are floating up, that have lived that good life and modeled after the saints. But what about the right side? That's where, look at here's and angels are pummeling these people and pushing them down. Look at this one, how miserable, being pulled down, being wrapped up and pulled down, thrown down towards hell. And then this poor guy over here, on very right on the top, he's being dragged down by his scrotum. And guess what his sin was? Lust. So this is very horrifying, and intended to put fear into people and let them recognize that in order to not go through this, they have to live this good life, be on the side of good, not the side of evil. I wanted to go back to this. Oh, I don't show it, but the figure, I wanted to show you this figure here on the, oh my God, this figure on the boat right here is a Greek from Greek mythology, and he's bringing these souls to hell, and he's beating them off the boat, pushing them off the boat. And there were people objected to that because that is mythology and is not related to religion. So so like I said, this is terrifying vision, and viewers could see this, what would happen to them if they did not follow the teachings of the church. Very effective. And that was the idea of the counter-Reformation art to come. Now, I'll just finish up with showing you some art from our collection, and I'm not going to talk extensively about it. Are there any questions before I go to that on the Last Judgment? I know I kind of beat that to death.
I don't have a question, Linda, but if I could interpose.
Yes.
A little bit of context about it.
Okay.
I think one of the key factors about the Last Judgment in the Sistine Chapel is that it wasn't just reflecting the counter-Reformation spirit, but also I think was
the sack of Rome.
Yeah, it was a result of the sack of Rome in 1527, which was kind of the 9/11 of that era. It shook Europe to its foundations when the forces of Charles V, a Catholic emperor, had issue with the Pope, and he sent his mercenaries into the city. They sacked the city, they raped nuns, they murdered priests, they looted churches. It was a reign of terror that went on for several months. And when they finally left, Rome was in a shambles, and people were so shaken that there was this mood of pessimism, almost like the Black Death in 1348. And so a lot of people see that doom and gloom in this painting as part of this horrible event that happened just 7 years before the fresco was commissioned and painted. The second aspect is this is not a new idea of Michelangelo's. The grandeur of it and the scale certainly is, but the cyclical raising of the dead on the left, going up to Christ for judgment, and going down to hell on the right goes all the way back to the Middle Ages. And if you look at the facades of the French cathedrals of the Romanesque period, other European cathedrals as well, and right on into the Gothic, they did the same thing carved in stone. The idea of we got to scare the faithful to their core about going to hell. And so, you know, through the portals, when you walked into church, you would walk under these figures of these horrible people tortured in hell, sort of like the ones Linda pointed out here. So this is part of a long tradition with a Counter-Reformation twist. So I wanted to throw those two ideas out. Richard has a hand up, and Jenna then. Richard first. Oh, he dropped out again. Jenna, go ahead.
I think traditionally too that it's always on Christ's left, or most of the time, where it's going to hell, and on Christ's right, you know, that's where the people go to heaven, or that's the cycle.
Yeah, well, and that's part of the tradition. I think it even says in the scriptures, and be seated at the right hand of God means you're at the favorable side. And it really, that goes back to the Middle Ages also, where in the time of knighthood and chivalry, in fact, probably all the way back to Rome, most people were right-handed. If you were going to draw your sword, which you keep on your left hip, you use your right hand. It would be almost impossible to hit someone with your sword who's sitting on your right. It would be a backhanded stab. The idea is your sword you can use against people on your left. So the idea is you put the people you don't trust on your left. In fact, the very Latin words have meaning. Left in Latin is sinister. Sinister. So we get the Latin word translated into English, sinister, right? And then on the right, dexter is right, so dexterous. So yeah, those traditions are buried really deeply in European tradition.
Yeah, and here he is raising his right hand and looking towards the people over there that are going to hell.
Yeah, now Richard's back. Do you have a hand up, Richard, or did you just disappear? Or did he leave again? I think he's having trouble with his connection. Okay, go ahead, sorry.
Just let me say it's Richard here. I am having great difficulty. I've been in and out about 4 or 5 times. So if I disappear, I'm probably going to say, you know, maybe it's God's purpose. Who am I to judge God's purpose, all right? But I will, literally, this has been the 5th time I've come on board. So I'll try to stick it out, but I may lose my faith.
Right. But you did not have a question.
No, I don't.
Oh, okay, fine. Back to you, Linda.
Okay, yeah, you're right. The Pope Paul III was dealing with those things at virtually almost the same time. It was really a tough time for him. Okay, so in our collection, we don't really have any that I'm aware of Counter-Reformation art in Renaissance. Maybe I thought perhaps Luini, because this does talk about salvation. We see, and I'm not going to talk about these very much, just point out, they're almost all about salvation. So here there's Mary Magdalene, and Martha is trying to get her to convert to the church, and she's pointing up to God. So that might qualify as Counter-Reformation, although this was probably not, this is a smaller painting, it's probably not a church commission painting. We'll see more in the Baroque period, although this El Greco on the right of the Penitent St. Peter was painted technically right before the end of the Renaissance, but it's painted in the Baroque style, and you'll be getting that in the Baroque session. But again, here this is talking about penance, and the idea that Peter has committed this great sin, but he is begging for forgiveness. He's confessing his sin. The idea of confession and receiving salvation, and portrayed in a very dramatic, direct way, in line with the Council of Trent ideas about what art should be. And then also Zurbaran's Saint Jerome, and that's a lovely date I've put on there. I will fix the date. But anyway, look at what he's doing. You see him pointing up. You see that diagonal from his arm pointing up to the trumpet in the sky, and he has his mouth open, and he's almost seems to be shouting, "Judgment Day is coming!" And he's holding the Bible. So you pay attention, and again, the saints were used as models. They lived this perfect life, and you were to try to model your life. And he's reminding you that judgment day is coming. And on the right, Murillo's Mary Magdalene. Again, this is about reminding you what's important. She's been out in the wilderness and making her decision. In the Luini, she hadn't made a decision. Here she's made her decision, and she's looking up, and she's bathed in this light. And look at her face, and she's a perfect model of what you should really be devoting yourself to the church, and asking for confessing, and asking for forgiveness, and asking for salvation. And also we've got the Bible here, and we've got the memento mori, or the skull, that's reminding you again that life is short. And as we saw so vividly from Michelangelo, Judgment Day is coming. So you should be prepared by living your life in the right way. And just finishing up with a summary of what we talked about, some of the differences in the beliefs. In the Catholic Church, salvation was faith, good works, and grace. And they wanted to uphold the role of the Virgin Mary and the saints as intercessors. You could ask for help from them. And veneration of relics, the 7 sacraments, including confession for penance. And art was encouraged in churches to cultivate piety and to teach, unlike the Protestants who really discouraged art in churches. So the Protestants, salvation was faith alone, and it was an individual relationship with God, not intercessors. The sacraments were pretty much reduced to baptism and communion, which gave less power to the clergy. And no church decoration was minimal, because some of them thought that the images were idolatrous. And instead they used art in the print form to teach religious lessons. And that's it.
Okay. Kay has a hand up if it's a good time.
Yeah, it looks like you have some words that are in a teeny tiny font, but that are important. Under Catholic, spiritual authority is through the church, and under Protestant, scriptures are the sole source of authority.
I don't see that.
They're teeny tiny words.
Oh.
So you just need to make the font bigger.
Oh, no, I probably just need to take it out.
No.
Oh, I didn't.
No, I think it's important.
Relevant.
I will look at that. I can't read it. I will look at that, and well, let me see. I could. It doesn't
There.
It doesn't do anything.
Yes, you just got it highlighted.
Okay. See, this is where my eyes failed me again.
You need an intercessor.
I do. Yes, you're right. They are important. They're very important. And I will match them to the font later. But yes, the spiritual authority is through the church. It's very important. Thank you, Kay. And scriptures are the sole source of authority in the Protestant church. Oh, thank God somebody can see. Any other questions? Otherwise, we're finished.
And I'm going to give myself a little commercial. I've got a lecture scheduled a month from today on the 28th of October that ties in a little to this whole Counter-Reformation idea, but it has a different twist on it. It's called Jewish Conversion and Counter-Reformation. Just to give you a little synopsis, it's about one of the programs that the Catholic Church instituted in the wake of the Council of Trent to bring about the conversion of Jews and Muslims. There was a very big school of thought that the second coming of Christ would not happen until all infidels, Jews and Muslims, were converted to Catholicism, and they instituted a number of organizations or programs to entice Jews and Muslims to convert. And if that didn't work, they were going to force them to convert. And there was this organization they set up in Rome. It was a confraternity. You can look that up later. That was going to coerce Jewish families to convert. And so it's interesting because they had a church that was dedicated to this. They got a rabbi and several other Jews who converted to pay for the decoration of the church. And the message was, you Jews are all wrong. You've got to convert to be saved. And so I'm going to talk about that in a month from now. So I hope you'll be interested to learn about that. Kay, are you done, or did you still have your hand up? Is it finished? Okay, so that's my commercial. Enough of that.
Things.
Wait a minute.
Other questions? Yeah.
Robbie has a hand up.
Yeah, Jim, actually, what is the context of your talk in terms of where and when? Did you mention that already? Or?
No, well, it's Counter-Reformation Rome. It's the very late 16th century.
Right. But are you giving a talk separate from?
Oh, no. It's
Part of the class.
Oh, it's part of the class. Sorry.
Part of the
Okay,
class.
understood. Look forward.
I apologize for not making that clear. Okie dokie.
Did
Anything else?
Lily leave us?
No, I'm here.
Good.
If there's no other question, we'll take a break. 11:03, we can start 11:15. We don't have anything else but the gallery exercises today. So
let's all thank Linda for her talk, and
yeah, it's really great.
We learned a lot. And
Thank you, Kay, for your eyes. That's important. I didn't even see it. I don't know how that happened. I don't know how it happened that they got made so little. Some little slip of the fingers.
Well,
So yeah, it was good. Thank you.
the devil made you do it. Okay.
That was it. It was the Pope.
Let's enjoy our break, and we'll see you back here in about
11:15. Yeah. Okay.
12 minutes then.
Yeah.
Jim, can I talk to you for a second?
Let me turn off the recording, yes, and then hang on.
Oh, good point. Turn off the recording. Yes.
Hang on. Yes.